I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. Welcome to my new series called The Pivot. We are so excited to bring you deeper conversations with people who've made really impactful changes in their lives. We're going to find out how they do it and how you can also learn from their experience. We're thrilled to be partnering with Signal Relief, a pain patch reliever. I've used it and had tremendous success. We're really excited to have you join us and learn more about how to make the important pivots in your life. Welcome to The Pivot. I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig, and today we have Gretchen Carlson, the former Miss America longtime journalist who is known for suing Roger Ailes and winning and starting a cultural Me Too movement that is impacting women for the better today. And she is going to tell us about the NDAs that she's working on and the bipartisan laws she has passed. I think you're going to find her story really interesting. Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on The Pivot. I am so thrilled to have you on my show, and I know our audience is just going to love hearing from you because you are admired for this cultural shift that you created. But before we get into the cultural shift, I just want to say that we had worked together when you were at Fox, and I always loved working with you because when you work with someone who's smart and talented, like it just helps. It helped me to be better than I usually am. And I want to thank you for that. Do you remember those old days?
Oh, yes. Well, those were some of the good days. Some of the other memories are not so great, but that was always fun. And I appreciate that. And I feel the same way about you. So thanks for having me on.
I remember when you initiated the lawsuit. I don't know if I'm using the right language. Because I just admired you so much, I was really worried. And I think I shared this with you. I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen to Gretchen? And you talk a little bit about how you really included your family in this decision and how bringing lawsuits was not really part of your makeup.
No, absolutely not. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, nice. You hear that about people there, and it's totally true. So I'm not really sure suing people's like at the top of the list. And, I'm still blessed to have my parents in my life. And no matter how old you get, you want your parents' approval. And they were not really in favor of it. But finally, after, my mom had been hearing what was happening to me for so long, and I remember exactly where I was sitting in my house when they called me about 6 months before. And it was a very emotional phone call. And they said, we're with you, whatever you have to do. And then I would just say my children, they were in middle school at the time. And obviously that's a really difficult time for kids in general. And I didn't want to add to their burden by having mommy suddenly be, this big story. But they were really, they were very understanding about it. I don't think they really got it completely, but they really get it now, Robbie. And that's what this is all about, is that they are young adults now. And I know that even if I've only changed those two lives as far as their perceptions about how women should be treated in the workplace, then it was worth every single thing. And I know that it's been so much more. So, big, difficult decision. I appreciate you felt sorry for me. I hear that from so many people. It wasn't fun. It wasn't fun at all. But it has turned out to be better than I could have ever expected because of all the work I've been doing now to help change the lives of other people. And so I always say, like, being a journalist is so amazing and I've loved it, but no interview would ever be as important as the work that I'm doing now.
I was just thinking about the situation. It's really like fate put you on this grander journey because as a result of deciding to move forward with the lawsuit and winning the lawsuit against Roger Ailes, things really started to change for you. When did you realize this was bigger than you ever imagined?
The first day, July 6, 2016, when I filed the lawsuit, because I knew it was going to get press attention. I had no idea that it would start an entire movement, which we eventually, used Me Too for, even though that name had come 10 years before, but it really exploded after my case. I thought I was just going to be sitting home crying my eyes out because they had fired me from a job that I had killed myself to achieve. I moved all over the country in television to get to Fox News, where I was doing my dream job, which was, a morning show, a national morning show. And so when that was taken away from me, I had no idea what was going to happen to me. But right away, women across our country started reaching out to me. And within a couple of weeks, I realized that they were my safety net, actually. They were sharing all of their stories with me of what had happened to them. And then I realized not only was there an epidemic still in our society with sexual harassment at work, but there was an epidemic of silencing all of these people. And all of these women who reached out to me had been silenced. Nobody ever knew whatever happened to them. They just disappeared from the workplace. And I decided, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this. There's no way that I can let this continue on the way that it is. And so I sort of hearkened back to my good work ethic from growing up in Minnesota with parents who told me I could be anything I wanted to be every day. And I was like, I got to get to work. And so I rolled up my sleeves and started finding the people who could help me change laws, and spent a lot of time in DC. And that was the beginning of, I've got to change laws so that people are no longer silenced.
Was that the pivotal moment where you really found this grand mission, where you could not only raise awareness about NDAs, but also you could help other women not have to suffer in the way you had suffered as a result of the laws that were in place?
Yeah, so it was sort of like a perfect storm. There were people who had been working on getting rid of NDAs and other silencing mechanisms for years. But what they really needed was a more high profile case, because, they were sort of talking into the wind and nobody was really caring about sexual harassment, to be honest. And so then my case came along. And so I got the institutional knowledge from them because they'd been working on this for so long, and they got my more high profile story. So it was like this perfect match. And I could get access to the members of Congress because I had interviewed almost all of them over my career. And from both sides, both of my laws that I've passed are bipartisan, which is saying something in this hyper political time that we live in. So, I think that it was this sort of perfect alignment where I learned so much from these other people, and then they could use my high profile nature to be able to bring more attention to it. And, it took a long time. I'm not trying to sugarcoat passing laws, because one thing I've learned is that members of Congress introduce a whole hell of a lot of bills, okay? But then you should ask them, how many have you actually passed? Because the answer is usually zero. So the idea that we introduced the first bill in 2017, I walked those halls of Congress for 5 years until we got it passed in 2021 and then signed by President Biden in 2022. And then my second bill, because we had already built this coalition of bipartisan lawmakers, I could go back to them and say, okay, now we need to work on NDAs, because the first bill was about something called forced arbitration, which nobody knows anything about, but you agree to it on your first day of work, and it means you can't go to a jury trial. You have to go to this secret chamber called arbitration. And that's how all these cases have been kept secret. The second evil is NDAs. So I went back to the members of Congress. I said, okay, thank you so much for the arbitration law, but now we got to get rid of NDAs for sexual misconduct. And within 8 months from that time, not only did we get the bill introduced in both the House and the Senate, but we got it passed and we got it signed by the president in December of 2022.
So what have women told you as a result of you passing these laws? So if they have, suffered from sexual harassment in the workplace, what can they share now about their story as a result of the work that you've done?
When I hear these stories from women who say, thank you so much because I could go to a jury trial. I wasn't forced into secrecy. And actually on my liftourvoices.org website, which is the name of my nonprofit, we have a new testimonial campaign with videos called Love Justice, videos of people who've been helped by our laws. And if you watch them, it's just so emotional because they are so grateful that they were not shoved into silence and that people believed them and that they found justice. So just in a short 3-year time period since these laws have passed, the impact is unbelievable. And so, I go back to what I said earlier, like the lives that I'm changing now, I don't even know all the lives that I'm changing. And that gives me so much gratitude because, look, we all want a purpose in life. I thought that my last, major purpose was going to be being a national journalist. I had no idea this is what was going to happen to my life, but it has given me great gratitude to know that I'm helping so many others.
You certainly knew what to do with this opportunity. I wonder how it's impacted men as well. Do you think they're as likely to be inappropriate? Because I know for a while men were worried that their behavior, their joking could be either misconstrued or construed properly, and they could be in danger.
When that started happening a couple of years into Me Too, where people were saying, well, we're not going to take our female colleagues out to dinners because you never know, it's like, wait a minute, that's such a cop-out. Like, you know how to behave, okay? You do. Men know how to behave. They just don't sometimes. So don't blame it on us because you don't know how to behave. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is with regard to men is we need them. I extend the olive branch to all men. First of all, most men are good people. Let's just make sure I say that. The bad actors are ruining it for these other good men who actually want to help women. And in my own unscientific study after my case broke and I would walk the streets of New York City, I have to tell you, more men stop me than women to say thank you. I think that this, really brought it home for men too, that a lot of them finally realized we have to do something about this. This isn't fair that we're treating our women like this in our society.
Gretchen, you're not able to tell your story, and you've had some really gorgeous actresses play you, Nicole Kidman and Naomi Watts, and you were not able to be consulted.
I know, it's such a great point, Robbie. Whenever I speak at conventions or elsewhere, and I say that I don't own my own story, people are like, what? They forget that I too was silenced with an NDA when I settled my situation with Fox News, because quite honestly, that's just the way we did business, right? Until I decided to come along and be like, wait a minute, what are we doing here? Like, you don't have to silence people just because this happened. Like, what about, there was always this thought process, well, if you get money from some entity, then in exchange for that, you have to be silenced. Well, we've actually done studies at Lift Our Voices to prove that that's actually not true. For example, in New Jersey now, you can't use NDAs for any kind of toxic workplace behavior. And we studied that after the law had been in effect for 4 years, and we found out that there was no change in the amount of settlements that people were getting for these kinds of cases. There was no change. And so it goes to show that when you put the power back into the hands of the survivor, then it's up to them whether or not they want to talk. And I have to tell you, most people still decide not to talk because we still live in a culture where you may be penalized if you do. I'm working hard to change that too, but we're still working in a culture that is like that. So even though they may not choose to talk, they know that they own their own story. And that's powerful for somebody who goes through an awful time in the workplace. And then just with regard to the movies and the miniseries, The Loudest Voice and Bombshell was the movie. Like, I'm so heartened that these actresses of that caliber took on these roles, because 10 years ago, they would not have made these movies. But I could not participate at all. And people are stunned by that. They come up to me and say, oh, I loved your movie. And the really interesting thing is I can't even tell you if the depiction of me was true or not because of this NDA that I've signed. And so the reality is I may never own my own voice. And that is sad for me. But luckily, my lawyers wrote into that settlement agreement. They must have been prescient in thought in some way, because they wrote into this settlement agreement that I would have the ability to talk about issues that affect women and girls. And I have taken full advantage of that. I mean, imagine if I hadn't gotten that carve out, I wouldn't have been able to do any of the work that I'm doing now. So I Won't own my own story, probably. The weird thing is, even though Roger Ailes is dead, he's been dead for 8 years. I'm still bound by an NDA for a dead man because it went to his wife and it went to his son. So they do this on purpose to make it very complicated so that you can never own your own voice. But now things are changing. Women are saying, I'm not going to sign that NDA. So a big part of what I do now is just trying to educate people about what they're signing. They just go ahead and sign, and then something bad happens and they realize they don't own their voice. And then it's problematic.
Well, God bless you, Gretchen. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. So I'm so grateful for your beauty, your intellect, and your ability to have moxie that helps women reclaim their voices in situations none of us should have to go through. What's next for you, Gretchen, and where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. So liftourvoices.org, as I mentioned, is all of my nonprofit work with my laws and my education about NDAs and forced arbitration. GretchenCarlson.com is just my website where, I have a little bit more lifestyle things in there, events that I've done, press events, that sort of thing, speeches. And in the last year, I've been an independent political contributor, mainly on CNN, which has been very, very fun. It's brought me great joy to sort of exercise a new muscle in television. It's still my passion, and I think I'm still good at it. So I've really enjoyed doing that. And so who knows? Like, Robbie, my life has worked in mysterious ways, and that's an understatement. I've had so many twists and turns, and I've had to reinvent myself so many different times, which I hope is inspirational, especially to women out there who are struggling with that. So I never say never. Like, I don't know. Like, will I be interested in politics down the road? Maybe. Right now, I'm just really busy with this advocacy work that I'm doing, and then dabbling back in television. But never say never, because you never know what opportunities are right around the corner.
I know wherever you end up, you will make a huge and positive difference. Thank you, Gretchen Carlson. I adore you, and thank you for doing the work that you do.
Thanks, Robbie.